Hi, my name is Paul Robertson. I'm the Superintendent of Victoria Golf Course, and I'm here to talk to you today about our tree management plan. The book was done 2 years ago. There are over 850 trees in this book, itemized by size, location, and health. Trees are rated from 1 being most hazardous to 3 not posing any immediate risk. Anything itemized by a number 1 means the tree has to be removed or managed immediately. Whenever we are in doubt as to the health of a tree, we use a resistograph. It's a technique of drilling into the tree and measures the strength of the cavity, the innermost portion of the tree. If you find a soft spot, you can be pretty sure that you've got some cavity decay inside the tree, and the tree would have to come down. You may have noticed throughout the winter and spring, a number of trees and hedges and plant material on the golf course suffered from salt spray, salt damage, even the Austrian pine. So somebody in the 80s looked around Victoria and said, Austrian pines seem to do well in salty locations, and decided to plant like crazy. They tend to grow with codominant stems meaning stems that are all fighting to become leader. There isn't one central growth point on the tree, so you end up with a lot of leaders, and that becomes a structural weak point on the tree. Another problem with Austrian pine is you get included bark, where the two codominant stems actually touch together, and you'll get rot between the codominant stems, and all of a sudden a huge limb will just tear off. 375 species or individual plantings of Austrian pine compared to all the other plant material on the golf course. All your trees are reaching the same maturity level at the same time. So there's no diversity of planting, there's no diversity of planting time. And it's one of the things that we've been working really hard on with the inventory is to try to identify other species that we can plant, like Western red cedar, Garry oak, that are indigenous to the island, to be planted at an interval that would ensure that we'd have 20 to 30 new trees per year, creating a diversity, but a timeline where they're not all the same age. This tree is number 451. If you look at the inventory under 451 Austrian pine, it's identified as fair condition. It's identified as a number 3, so not a very high hazard, but it has some notes associated with it. In particular, you can look, there's included bark, so at some point in time the bark is folded in on itself. There's actually a conch, which is a fungal fruiting body, actually rot right through the cord of the tree. And there was a tear out. At some point in time, there was another large branch that came out here and created this occlusion. We'd bring in Oak Bay and have their arborists take a look at it as well and make sure that this tree is sound or not sound. And if we get the permit to remove, they would remove the tree and replace it with something. The trees that I came out on the windstorm, and I can actually see the tree separating here. You can actually see the tree pulling apart this intersection. So there's a tear out in this section here where they've lost a large branch before. You've got included bark. You've got codominant stems with branches going in every direction with no structural integrity. Down below, it's actually rotted right through. You can stick your hand through here and you can see all the sawdust associated with this. This is actually rot, and insects are decomposing the heartwood of the tree. So this tree will just hollow right out. Sometimes prevents us from moving something like this because we're so worried about the impact of the members and the sensitivity around taking a large tree out. But the safe thing to do would be to take this tree out. So the next step is bring Oak Bay in, have them come and have a look at this. They're going to identify that right away and see that as being a hazard. It's close to 18T. It's right between 18 and 1 fairway, so lots of golf, lots of potential for this to fall down and hurt somebody. This tree moves from a 3 to number 1. So we're standing in front of sequoias on 18 that best represent the need for a tree management plan for a number of reasons. One, in species selection. We selected these trees before we had a tree management plan for 3 criteria. 1, their ability to screen the 18th tee and provide some protection. 2, they had to be fast growing because we had no protection in this area. And 3, they had to be relatively salt tolerant. And this seems to be kind of the dividing line on the golf course for salt tolerance. You get any closer to the ocean, it's too close and we end up getting a lot of salt damage on trees. So without a tree management plan, we weren't really aware of the full mature height of the tree. We didn't really think about that when we planted these trees to provide screening for 18T. But unfortunately, this species grows so big, the trunks grow so large in diameter, they're going to grow out and essentially make the 18th tee unplayable in the future. So we're going to have to look at removing a couple of these trees, keeping maybe the tree close to the first fairway, but the rest would have to come out. In front of the clubhouse on the 16th green, looking back at the parking lot and some interesting situations happening here. The firs behind us were greatly disturbed in the 80s during the reconstruction of the clubhouse. There was a lot of fill placed on them, around them, a lot of disruption. But you can see they withstood all that work. If they were going to die, they would have died by now. But you can see a lot of limb loss. The trees are very top heavy, and there's a lot of damage towards the top of the tree that's required some cable bracing. We have a family of eagles that comes back every year, so it's very important that we maintain these trees and maintain that habitat for the eagle family. And any work that we do on those trees, whether it's some structural pruning, adjusting the cable braces, we do after the babies have left the nest and the family has left the nest for the year. Behind me, there's a rather large arbutus tree that is a number 2, so relatively hazardous tree, has some health issues, but we were able to mitigate that by cable and bracing the tree. Screwing bolts through the tree to hold it together, and then attaching the top portions of the branches with cables so they don't move as much. And if they do move, they move in concert, they move together so that branches aren't going to fall off and break apart. The last group of trees we're going to talk about today are the Lombardy poplars adjacent to the 15th hole. They provide a lot of protection to the parking lot. So a tree that grows quickly lives 50, 60 years, compared to an oak tree that grows very slowly lives to 500, 1,000 years. The other problem with these trees is they get fungal disease, and unfortunately you can't see it until the tree starts to fail. So we've already lost 2 in this stand, and they're probably in the last 10 years of their lifespan right now. So with that being said, we need to start planting something in between them too. So natural evolution of any tree management plan is to identify the species at risk, come up with a management plan to control, maintain, remove the trees that need to be removed, maintain the trees that need to be maintained, repair the trees that need to be repaired. But then the last chapter or the last part of a tree management plan is coming up with a plan, a systematic plan to replace them with better species and get some more diversity on the golf course. So what we're trying to do is pick a new variety. It's called Select Green, has a little bit better potential for growth. And as you can see, it's got more of a uniform Christmas tree-like growth. So it's got a very strong apical meristem, a very strong leader. It's not going to suffer from the codominant stems. A little bit about Western Red Cedar. Western Red Cedar is indigenous to the West Coast, so we're going to be using a lot more Western Red Cedar. The only problem with Western Red Cedar is they're very, very dense. There's a lot of branches. There's not a lot of potential for air to move through them. So they're going to be very susceptible to blowdown from wind. So we have to be careful where we use them and not in windward locations. They're not going to do well on the ocean. We're fortunate to have a world-class golf course by the sea within city limits, and our tree management plan is going to ensure that it stays that way for future generations.